The woman from Lotto, New Zealand handed me a check I could barely hold with both hands. $32 million. The cameras went off like lightning over the harbor, and all I could think about was how my fingers smelled of diesel and salt water, 40 years of it soaked into the skin, and no amount of money was going to wash that out. A reporter from the Bay of Plenty Times leaned over the rope. "Do you have family to celebrate with tonight?" I kept smiling. "I have everything I need," I said. But that was a lie, and my chest knew it before my mouth did. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. My name is Clive Marsden. 65 years old. Retired port operations manager at the port of Tauranga, where I spent 4 decades making sure containers moved from ship to shore to truck without a single one going missing. That was my gift. Not brilliance, not charm. Precision. Every container had a number, a destination, a timeline. Every risk had a contingency. I could look at a cargo manifest and spot the problem before the ship even docked. People called me boring. Predictable. Those same people never lost a shipment on my watch. I bought the Powerball ticket at the dairy on Devonport Road. A Thursday evening habit. $2 and a dream, that's what the woman behind the counter always said. She'd been saying it for 15 years and I'd been nodding for 15 years, both of us playing our parts. But on that particular Thursday in October, the numbers lined up like containers on a well-run wharf. 6 numbers and the Powerball. $32 million, and in New Zealand, lottery winnings are tax-free. Every cent of it mine. The money arrived in my account 4 days later. I sat in my rental flat in Greerton, the same 2-bedroom unit I'd lived in since the divorce 23 years ago, and stared at the number on my banking app. 32 million. More zeros than I'd ever seen outside a shipping invoice. I closed the app, opened it again. Still there. I made myself a cup of tea, sat back down, opened it a third time. Still there. The next morning I walked into the ANZ branch on Cameron Road and asked for their senior financial advisor. The woman who met me wore a blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She spent 10 minutes congratulating me. Then her voice dropped. "You'll want to protect this, Mr. Marsden. Large sums attract attention. Family members, old acquaintances, people you haven't heard from in years." "I understand risk," I said. "I managed cargo worth more than this for 4 decades. Let's talk about trusts and asset protection." Her eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded. We spent 2 hours discussing family trusts, investment structures, and legal frameworks specific to New Zealand. I took notes the way I always had, block letters in a ruled notebook, 1 point per line, no wasted space. I bought a house in Mount Maunganui 3 weeks later. A 4-bedroom place with views over the ocean, set back from Marine Parade. 1.6 million, paid in full. The real estate agent kept telling me how lucky I was. I didn't feel lucky. I felt exposed. Lotto New Zealand required public disclosure for major winners. My name and face had been on every news site in the country. The Tauranga Bulletin ran a profile. TVNZ did a segment. My photograph circulated on social media like cargo without a tracking label, going everywhere, no control over where it ended up. Moving day came with Waikato rain drifting across the harbor. My possessions looked pathetic in the new house. 40 years of living modestly fit into about 12 boxes. I unpacked methodically. Plates sorted by size. Books alphabetical on the study shelves. Clothes hung with even spacing, the way I'd always done it. The house was too big. Too quiet. I stood on the deck that first evening, watching the sun drop behind Maui, the ancient volcano that locals just called the Mount. I'd imagined retirement differently once. My daughter visiting with her family. Grandchildren running across the lawn. That version of my life had died 14 years ago, and the death certificate was a checkbook thrown at my feet. Her name was Nicola. Nikki, we'd called her when she was small. She was 22 when it happened. Fresh out of university, engaged to a man named Darren Price who talked about property development the way some men talk about religion, with absolute certainty and no evidence. They came to my flat one Sunday afternoon. Darren had a folder. A development opportunity in Papamoa, he said. Beachfront sections. Guaranteed returns. They needed $200,000. I opened my savings book. I had $42,000. Every spare dollar from decades of port work, saved for Nikki's future, for her wedding, for whatever she might need. That's all you have? Nikki's face changed. Her voice changed. Everything I'd loved about her face twisted into something I didn't recognize. 42,000? Dad, Darren's opportunity needs 200 minimum. You're a port manager earning 80,000 a year. You've been working since you were 20 and this is all you've saved? That's pathetic. It's what I have, I said quietly. Take it. For your wedding. Darren put his hand on her shoulder. Told her they'd find the money elsewhere. But the look he gave me said everything. Disappointment. Contempt. I was a man who didn't measure up to the investment they'd calculated. Nikki threw the savings book on the floor. Pages scattered across the carpet. You've never done anything with your life, she said. A warehouse man pushing boxes. That's your legacy. Don't bother coming to the wedding. The door slammed. 14 years of silence followed. I heard through a cousin that they'd married, moved to Hamilton, had no children. That Darren's property ventures kept failing. That Nikki worked part-time at a clothing shop. I absorbed each piece of information the way I logged damaged cargo. Noted, filed, moved on. Now I stood in a 4-bedroom house in Mount Maunganui with $32 million and a view of the ocean I had nobody to share. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through contacts. Port colleagues I'd worked alongside for decades. I could call them. Say what? Come admire my money and my empty rooms? I put the phone away. Made another cup of tea. Sat on the deck. Let the silence settle around me like fog on the harbor. 5 days after I moved in, the local news ran another segment about my win. I caught it on the television while eating dinner. There I was on screen, holding that ridiculous check, squinting against the camera flashes. The reporter mentioned my name, my age, my background. My suburb. 2 days later, the doorbell rang at 4:30 in the afternoon. I froze. I hadn't ordered anything. Hadn't given my address to anyone except my lawyer, my bank, and my accountant. I walked to the front window and looked through the blinds. A white Toyota Corolla sat in my driveway, boot open, suitcases stacked on the pavement. 2 figures stood at my front door. The woman's face was angled away, but something about the way she stood, one hip cocked, arms folded, sent a jolt through me that 40 years of port work had never managed. Then she turned toward the window, and 14 years collapsed in a single heartbeat. Nikki. 36 years old now. Thinner. Sharper in the jaw, harder around the eyes. Behind her stood Darren, heavier than I remembered, wearing a polo shirt stretched tight across his stomach. My hand rested on the door handle. Every instinct from 4 decades of cargo protection told me not to open it. Unexpected arrivals after a windfall are visitors. Their problems. But another instinct, older, deeper, the one that remembered holding a newborn girl at Tauranga Hospital and counting her tiny fingers, that instinct made me turn the handle. I need to explain something here because I know what you're thinking. Why did I let them in? Here's the truth. When you spend 40 years assessing risk, you learn that knowing a threat is better than guessing about one. I wanted to see their faces. Hear their words. Understand exactly what I was dealing with. In port operations, we never turned away a suspicious container at the gate. We let it in, scanned it, documented everything. Then we dealt with it. That's what I did. Hi, Dad. Nikki's voice carried a brightness so false it practically had a barcode on it. We saw you on the news. We're so proud of you. We thought you could use some company. Darren moved forward before I could speak, picking up a suitcase and stepping past me into the hallway. The word dad hit me like a crane hook swinging loose. 14 years since I'd heard her say it. The last time, she'd been 22, screaming it like a weapon. We figured we'd stay for a bit, Nikki continued, already walking through the house, opening doors, inspecting rooms the way a buyer inspects a property. This one's nice. We'll take this room. Darren needs somewhere for his business calls too. Not questions. Statements. They'd already decided. I said nothing. Just watched. Assessed. Let them settle in while I retreated to my study, closed the door, and opened my laptop. The first thing I searched was estate planning lawyer Tauranga. The top result was a firm in the CBD. Patrick Goppo, specializing in trust law and asset protection. I made an appointment for 9 the next morning. I also want to explain how Nikki found my address. I learned this later from the private investigator I hired, but I'll tell you now because it was eating at me from the moment she showed up. My cousin Beth in Rotorua, a kind woman but loose with information, had posted a congratulations message on Facebook when my win went public. Someone commented asking where I'd moved. Beth replied, "Oh, he's bought a lovely place in the Mount, right near Marine Parade." That comment sat there for 2 days before Beth deleted it. But Nikki had seen it. She'd been watching for exactly that kind of slip. It took her less than a day to narrow it down from there. The next morning, I told Nikki and Darren I had banking business to attend to. They didn't question it. They were too busy arguing about which of my walls needed repainting. Patrick Goppo's office sat on the 3rd floor of a building overlooking the Tauranga waterfront. Clean lines, made of timber furniture, a Punama pendant hanging behind his desk. He was maybe 50, direct in manner, gaudy Ranjingui by his own introduction. He shook my hand once, firmly, and gestured to the chair. "Mr. Marsden. What can I do for you?" I slid my handwritten asset list across the desk. He read it, nodded. "New Zealand law is straightforward on this," he said. "You have absolute testamentary freedom. No forced heirship. Your daughter has no automatic legal right to any portion of your estate. Even as my only child? Even then. This isn't the UK or parts of Europe. In New Zealand, you decide where your assets go." He paused. "However, there is the Family Protection Act of 1955. It allows family members to challenge a will if they can demonstrate the deceased failed to make adequate provision for their proper maintenance and support." So she could challenge? She could try. But 14 years of no contact, combined with evidence that she returned only after your windfall, makes any such claim extremely weak. Especially if we document everything properly. I leaned forward. Documentation is what I do. We spent 2 hours drafting my will. I directed everything to 3 organizations. 60% to the Tauranga Women's Refuge. 25% to the SPCA Bay of Plenty. 15% to a scholarship fund for port workers' children, something I'd wanted to create for years. We included an explicit clause. I specifically exclude my daughter, Nicola Marsden Price, from this will. This exclusion reflects a deliberate and considered decision made of sound mind, not through oversight or spite, but because I choose to direct my resources toward causes aligned with my values. Patrick notarized it. Filed the original in his vault. Handed me a copy. As I stood to leave, he reached into his drawer and produced a business card. "If you need background work done, Steve Kirkpatrick. Former police detective, now private. Thorough and discreet." 3 days later, I met Steve Kirkpatrick at a cafe on Pilot Bay. 54, weathered face, the kind of stillness that comes from years of watching people. He ordered a flat white and listened to my situation without interrupting. "What do you need?" he asked when I finished. "Everything. Financial records, debts, employment history. Why they're really here." Steve pulled out a notebook. 2 weeks. 3,000 retainer. I transferred the money on my phone before he'd finished his coffee. Back at the house, Nikki and Darren were settling deeper into my space with every passing day. I came home one afternoon to find they'd rearranged the living room. My bookshelves reorganized by color instead of subject. My vinyl collection moved to the garage. A new rug they'd ordered on my credit card without asking. We freshened the place up, Nikki said, gesturing proudly. I said nothing. Took photographs with my phone. Darren cornered me in the kitchen the next morning, tablet in hand, crude slides flickering on screen. I've got a business proposition, Clive. A cafe franchise in Papamoa Beach. Boutique coffee, acai bowls, the whole package. 250,000 gets you in on the ground floor. 20% equity. I spent 40 years watching cargo move through the busiest export port in New Zealand, I said pleasantly. I understand supply chains, margins, and market saturation. There are already 14 cafes within 2 kilometers of Papamoa Beach. I'll think about it. His jaw tightened. This will wait, Clive. Opportunities like this disappear. I'll think about it, I repeated. He walked away. The kitchen smelled of the expensive coffee beans they'd bought on my account. 10 days later, Steve called. Cafe on the Strand. 2 o'clock. He slid a folder across the table, thick with documents. They're sinking, he said. You're the life raft. I opened the folder. Credit card debt across 4 cards, $63,000. Personal loans, $31,000. Overdue rent on their Hamilton flat, 4 months behind. Tenancy tribunal application filed by the landlord. Darren's business history filled 2 pages. A failed dropshipping venture, 12,000 lost. A cryptocurrency scheme, 18,000 gone. An attempt at property development in Te Awamuta that never got past the consent stage. Combined income 58,000 annually. Nikki worked 20 hours a week at a retail store in Hamilton. Darren's income was sporadic at best, commission-based sales with long gaps between checks. I photographed every page. Steve tapped the tenancy tribunal notice. This was filed before your win went public. They were already being evicted. You're not their father. You're their backup plan. I paid Steve, drove back to the Mount. That evening, Nikki appeared in my study doorway. Dad, I hate to ask, but we've got some unexpected bills. Could you lend us $5,000? Just until next month. Money has to last, Nikki. I met her eyes. 32 million sounds like a lot, but I'm 65. Could be another 25, 30 years. I have to be careful. Her irritation flashed before the smile returned. 5,000 is nothing compared to what you've got. I'll think about it. She left, jaw tight. Late that night, I sat in my locked study reviewing Steve's report. 94,000 in debt. Eviction pending. Failed investments. They didn't come for reconciliation. They came because they'd run out of options and I was the easiest mark they knew. I opened a new document on my laptop. Titled it Evidence Log. Began entering dates, conversations, demands, observations. 40 years of tracking cargo had taught me meticulous record keeping. This was just a different kind of shipment, and I needed to know exactly what was in every container. 3 weeks passed. Nikki and Darren grew bolder. More comfortable. More demanding. I planned my next move carefully. On a Friday evening, I prepared dinner. Market fish from the Tauranga fish market, roasted camara, a good Hawke's Bay Pinot Gris. Set the table properly, called them down. They arrived wary but curious. I poured the wine, raised my glass. Family matters. My voice was warm, steady. I was wrong to let 14 years go by. Nikki, I'm updating my will. You'll receive 40% of my estate. But I need to see that you've changed. 6 months of community work. Consistent involvement. Demonstrate character. Mickey's face transformed. Joy, quickly controlled. Dad, we have changed. We want to be here. We want to be family again. Darren leaned in, nodding eagerly. We appreciate this, Clive. You won't regret it. I set down my glass. Before I sign anything, the community needs to see your commitment. Volunteering at the SPCA, supporting the Women's Refuge fundraising, participating in local events. Actions, not words. 6 months is a long time, Darren started. Mickey shot him a look that could have cut steel. It's perfectly reasonable. We're happy to help. Service is important, isn't it, Darren? He swallowed whatever he was about to say. Nodded. The trap closed. Saturday morning, I drove them to the SPCA Center on 15th Avenue. Fiona Webb, the volunteer coordinator, greeted us warmly. Practical clothes, kind eyes, genuine enthusiasm for the animals. Mr. Marsden, lovely to meet your family. She shook Mickey's hand, then Darren's. We always need help. Let me show you around. The shelter smelled of disinfectant and wet dog. Kennels lined the corridor. Fiona explained the routine. Feeding, cleaning, walking, socializing animals for adoption. Mickey's smile stayed fixed, but her eyes told a different story. She stepped carefully around puddles, kept her distance from the dogs barking through the gates. Darren barely touched anything, hands shoved deep in his pockets. They volunteered for 3 hours. Mickey cleaned one kennel, grimacing whenever Fiona's back was turned. Darren stood nearby offering suggestions rather than actually doing anything. I photographed them periodically. Documenting our family time, I explained. In the car afterward, Darren exploded. This is degrading. Scooping dog muck for a wool that should be ours by right. She's your only daughter, for God's sake. Mickey grabbed his arm. Keep it down. 12 million, Darren. 6 months. We can pretend anything for that. I watched them in the rearview mirror and said nothing. Over the next 5 weeks, I arranged their participation in several events. A fundraiser for the Women's Refuge at the Tauranga Club. A beach cleanup at Papamoa organized by the local council. A literacy program at the Tauranga City Library. At each one, Mickey and Darren performed their roles. Smiled for cameras. Shook hands. And complained privately afterward. I documented everything. Under New Zealand law, specifically the Crimes Act 1961, Section 216B, it's lawful to record a private communication if you're a party to it. I was a party to every conversation in my own home. Every word they spoke went onto my phone, timestamped and backed up. The food bank where Darren complained about manual labor under his breath. The literacy session where Mickey spent more time on her phone than helping children read. The beach cleanup where both disappeared for 45 minutes claiming they needed to find a bathroom. Volunteers noticed. Comments filtered back to me through Fiona and others. Your daughter doesn't seem very engaged. Is she all right? She's adjusting, I said. Give her time. Privately, I noted every observation in my evidence log. Late one evening, I positioned my phone on the bookshelf in the living room, angled toward the sofa. Recording light hidden behind a picture frame. I returned to the kitchen where Mickey and Darren had emerged from their room. Mickey's voice floated through the wall that night. How much longer do we have to keep doing this? 4.5 months, Darren answered. Then we're set. Just smile, pat the dogs, pretend you care about homeless women and shelter animals. The old man's completely buying it. He's so desperate for family he'll sign whatever we put in front of him. We just have to play nice a little longer. My phone captured every word. Another document saved to the folder I'd labeled Evidence Collection. Late March. The weather in the Bay of Plenty was still warm, summer holding on. Darren found me in the kitchen one morning while I was making tea. 6 weeks of this charity nonsense, Clive. We've done everything you asked. $20,000. Consider it an advance on the inheritance. Inheritance means after I'm dead, I said, each word measured. I'm alive. My money stays mine. His face reddened. Sitting on millions while your own daughter struggles. What kind of father does that? Mickey appeared in the doorway. Dad, we've proven ourselves. We volunteered, done everything you wanted. Don't you trust us? Trust takes years, not weeks. Her mask slipped, voice sharpening. You won the lottery, Dad. It's not like you earned it through some brilliant career. You bought a ticket at a dairy. Darren lost control entirely. Let's be honest. You were nobody before that ticket. A bloke counting boxes on a wharf for 40 years. You got lucky. You don't deserve this money any more than we do. The insults washed over me. I'd heard them before. I offered everything I had 14 years ago, I said. You threw it on the floor. I'm offering what's fair now. Nothing. Darren stormed out. The guest room door slammed hard enough to rattle the frames on the wall. That evening, my friend Beverly Sutton stopped by with a container of homemade lemon cake. 63, retired school principal, sharp as a tack behind her reading glasses. We'd met at the Mount Walking Group 6 months before my win, back when I was just the quiet bloke who showed up every Tuesday at 6 in the morning. She'd never treated me any differently after the money. That's how I knew she was genuine. We sat on the front deck with tea. The sun was dropping behind Mao, turning the sky pink and gold. From inside, Darren's voice carried clearly through the open window. Your father is a selfish old man sitting on a pile of money he doesn't deserve. Once we get the inheritance, we're finished with him. We'll sell whatever we get, move to Queensland, never look back. Mickey's response. 6 months. We can stomach him for 6 months. Then we never have to see this boring bloody town again. Beverly's hand covered her mouth. She turned to me, eyes wide. I showed no surprise. Wilbert, she whispered. They're using you. I know exactly what they are. I pulled out my phone, opened my recordings folder. I've been collecting evidence for 6 weeks. Her expression shifted from shock to something like admiration. You've been planning this. 40 years of port operations. I know how to track cargo and catch thieves. This is the same job, different wharf. Over the following week, Mickey and Darren's legal strategy escalated. I received a letter from a Hamilton law firm. Patterson McLeod. They were seeking a monthly support payment of $4,000 under the premise that Mickey was financially dependent and I had the means to provide. The legal basis was thin. New Zealand has no filial responsibility law compelling parents to financially support adult children. But the letter was designed to intimidate, not to win. The strategy was to make enough noise that I'd settle just to make it stop. I forwarded it to Patrick Ngapo. He called me within the hour. Laughable, he said. No legal leg to stand on. But they can waste your time and money. That's the play. Annoy you into paying. I don't pay ransom. Good. Then we prepare a response. And we hold the recordings in reserve. Meanwhile, I had bigger plans. The Tauranga Coastal Trust had been organizing a gala fundraiser for months. Community leaders, local business owners, media. 300 guests at the Tauranga Yacht Club. I'd been invited to speak because of my donations to local organizations. I accepted, and then I made a phone call to the AV company handling the event. 2 weeks before the gala, I found Mickey and Darren in the living room. I held up 2 embossed invitations. I'm being honored at the Coastal Trust Gala for my charitable work. I want my daughter there when I announce my legacy plans. Mickey's eyes narrowed. You're announcing the will publicly? I'm announcing my long-term vision. Family should be present for moments like this. Darren's face lit up. We'll be there. Absolutely. They thought they'd won. The week before the event, I stood in the Tauranga Yacht Club function room with the AV technician. We tested every audio clip, every transition, every slide. Volume levels good here? The technician adjusted the speakers. Darren's voice filled the empty room. The old man doesn't deserve this money. He got lucky with the ticket. That's all. Perfect, I said. The evening of the gala arrived. Late autumn in the Bay of Plenty, clear skies, the harbor gleaming under venue lights. 300 guests in evening dress. Community leaders, charity coordinators, local counselors. 2 news crews set up cameras along the walls. Nikki and Darren arrived dressed to impress. She wore a green dress, probably bought on my credit card. He'd rented a suit. They smiled and shook hands in the receiving line like they'd been doing it all their lives. Thank you for coming, I said warmly, clasping Nikki's hand while cameras flashed around us. It means everything to have family here tonight. Darren whispered to Nikki as they moved past. He's going to announce the will in front of everyone. We're about to become very well-known heirs. I heard every word. Let him believe it. Dinner service began. Crayfish, lamb rack, Bay of Plenty wines. The Coastal Trust chairwoman gave a speech about community and service. Then she introduced me. And now, Clive Marsden, whose generosity has supported so many causes in our region. I took the podium. Nikki and Darren sat in the second row, confident smiles locked in place. Thank you for this honor tonight. I gripped the edges of the lectern. I want to talk about family, sacrifice, and what we truly value. I spoke about community service, about the organizations doing real work in Tauranga. The audience nodded, engaged. Then I shifted. My daughter Nicola is here tonight. We were estranged for 14 years. When I won the lottery, she returned. I want to show you why. The screen behind me lit up. Darren's voice filled the yacht club through the speaker system. The old man is nothing without that ticket. He's always been a nobody. We just have to wait him out. A collective gasp moved through the room. Mickey's face went white. Darren's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. I clicked again. Mickey's voice, clear and unmistakable. 6 months. We can stomach him for 6 months. Then we never have to see him again. Photographs appeared on screen. Mickey grimacing while cleaning a kennel at the SPCA, when she thought no one was looking. Darren on his phone, back turned to the literacy volunteers he was supposed to be helping. Third clip. Darren asking about my death. And when exactly does the inheritance kick in? Asking for planning purposes, obviously. Timeline graphic showing the 5-day gap between my win going public and their arrival at my door with suitcases. My voice stayed steady over the presentation. 14 years ago, they demanded $200,000. I offered $42,000, every dollar I had. They called me pathetic and disappeared. They returned 5 days after I won $32 million. Not as family. As creditors. Final slide. My will. Redacted but clear. Tauranga Women's Refuge. SPCA Bay of Plenty. Port Workers Scholarship Fund. And the clause, I specifically exclude my daughter, Nicola Marsden Price, from this will. These organizations serve people who sacrificed everything and asked for nothing, I said. My family sacrificed nothing and appeared when money did. My legacy goes where it will do the most good. Silence. Then one person clapping. Then 10. Then the entire room standing, 300 people on their feet. Nikki shot up from her chair. You're lying. This is all taken out of context. You recorded us illegally. New Zealand's Crimes Act allows one-party consent recording. I was present for every conversation. These recordings are completely lawful. And context doesn't change your words, Nikki. Those are your words, exactly as you spoke them. Darren leaned forward. Security staff, 2 broad men in black suits, stepped smoothly between him and the podium. This isn't over, Marsden. We'll sue you for everything. Defamation. Emotional distress. You can't humiliate us like this. I stood at the podium, microphone still live. I didn't humiliate you. I played your own words. You humiliated yourselves. Nikki screamed from the doorway as security guided them out. We're your family. You owe us. I owed you love and care when you were a child, I said. I gave that. You owed me nothing then. I owe you nothing now. We're even. The doors closed behind them. The room erupted in applause again. I stood at the lectern, composed, while flashbulbs popped and reporters scribbled. 6 days later, Patrick Ngapo called. They've filed. Defamation, emotional distress, breach of privacy. Everything we expected. How strong? Very weak. Patterson McLeod again, asking for $2 million in damages. Judge assigned is Helen Driscoll out of the Tauranga High Court. She's fair and she doesn't tolerate frivolous claims. 2 weeks later, I stood outside the Tauranga District Court. A June morning, cold and bright, winter settling over the Bay of Plenty. Both matters today, Patrick said. Trespass application at 10, defamation preliminary at 2. The trespass hearing took 20 minutes. Nikki and Darren's lawyer couldn't dispute the basic facts. They'd refused to leave when asked. No tenancy agreement, no license to occupy, no legal right to be in my home. The judge issued a trespass order. 14 days to vacate. Case closed. The defamation hearing drew more attention. Media filled the gallery. The gala footage had gone viral across New Zealand. Stuff, the New Zealand Herald, even the Australian media picked it up. 3 million views and counting. Patterson, their lawyer, looked like he hadn't slept. Your Honor, Mr. Marsden deliberately humiliated our clients in a public forum, causing severe emotional distress and reputational damage. Judge Driscoll turned to Patrick. Response? Truth is an absolute defense to defamation in New Zealand. Patrick placed the authenticated recordings on the bench. Every statement Mr. Marsden made was substantially true, supported by audio recordings obtained lawfully under Section 216B of the Crimes Act, photographic evidence, and corroborating witness testimony. The recordings were obtained without our client's knowledge, Patterson objected. One party consent, Patrick replied calmly. Mr. Marsden was present for or the direct subject of every recorded conversation. The law is clear. Judge Driscoll reviewed the evidence. Listened to clips through headphones. Studied the photos. Read witness statements from Fiona Webb, from Beverly, from 3 other volunteers. She removed the headphones. Mr. Patterson, your client's own statements are their undoing. Mr. Marsden presented truthful information in a public context. The claim has no merit. Dismissed with prejudice. Costs awarded to the defendant. The gavel struck. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded me. Mr. Marsden, how does it feel to have the court validate what you did? I chose my words carefully. I don't feel victorious. I feel finished. This needed to end, and now it has. Will you pursue damages against your daughter? No. She has nothing left to take. This was never about money for me. It was about truth. I drove back to the Mail that afternoon. The guest rooms were empty. They'd cleared out while I was in court, according to Steve Kirkpatrick's update. Taken everything and headed south. Wellington, apparently. As far from the Bay of Plenty as they could get without leaving the country. Beverly called that evening. I saw the news. The judge threw out everything. How do you feel? I don't feel victorious, I said again, watching my reflection in the kitchen window. I feel finished. You protected yourself, Clive. You did what you had to. Necessary. That's the word. Not satisfying. Just necessary. Late that night, I walked through the empty guest bedroom. Found a photograph under the bed. Old picture of Nikki, maybe 7 years old, grinning on the beach at Pilot Bay, ice cream on her chin, sun in her hair. Before money mattered. Before demands and insults. Before 14 years of silence. I looked at it for a long time. Then I placed it face down on the dresser and walked away. Within the week, I listed the Mount Maunganui house. Too many recent memories. Too many rooms built for a family that never came. I found a smaller place, a 2-bedroom townhouse in Bethlehem, just south of Tauranga. Modest kitchen, a small garden, morning sun through east-facing windows. Less echo. Less emptiness. More appropriate for one person living a real life instead of performing a wealthy one. The neighbors were the first sign that I'd made the right choice. Mrs. Kahu next door brought over a plate of pikelets the day I moved in. The retired teacher across the road invited me to join the Bethlehem walking group. Small kindnesses from people who didn't know about the lottery and wouldn't have cared if they did. They saw a new neighbor. That was enough. A month after the court rulings, Steve Kirkpatrick called with a final update. "Closing your file," he said. "Thought you'd want to know. Nikki and Darren have separated. He's gone to Australia. She's moved back to Hamilton, living with a friend. Working full-time at a bookshop. Their debts are up around $120,000 now with the legal fees on top." The viral video from the gala follows Darren everywhere. No one will hire him. Background checks pull up the news coverage. I absorbed the information. Waited for some emotional response. Relief, satisfaction, guilt. Nothing came. Just facts, filed away like a manifest entry. "She's struggling," Steve added. "But she's working. That's something." After we hung up, I sat in my small garden watching the two-way fight over the flax flowers. I didn't want them destroyed. I wanted them gone. There's a difference. But sometimes consequences are harsher than intentions. 6 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon in late August, the doorbell rang. I opened the door expecting a parcel from the bookshop, something I'd ordered about native bird species. Nikki stood on my step. Alone. No Darren, no suitcases, no designer clothes. She wore jeans and a plain gray jumper, both clean but worn. She looked exhausted. Thinner than before, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back simply. "Can I come in?" Her voice barely carried. "Just to talk." "Please." Every instinct screamed caution. But curiosity pulled at me, and something older, deeper, some residual paternal instinct that 14 years of hurt couldn't completely destroy, made me step aside. She entered slowly. Sat on the edge of the sofa, back straight, hands clasped tightly in her lap. I stood near the bookshelf, maintaining distance. My hand rested near my phone. "Dad, I was wrong." Tears started immediately. About everything. 14 years ago and now. I've been reflecting since the court case. The video going viral. Darren leaving. Losing everything. It made me see what I'd become. I watched her. 40 years of managing people had taught me to distinguish genuine emotion from calculated performance. I stayed silent. I was greedy. I used you. I said horrible things. She looked up, tears tracking down her cheeks. "You deserved so much better from me. I don't want your money. I just want my father back. Can we start over?" Every father wants to believe their child has changed. That's hardwired into us, some biological imperative that survives betrayal and disappointment. But 40 years of logistics taught me to trust patterns over promises. Data over hope. I sat down in the chair across from her. Coffee table between us like a demilitarized zone. "What changed, Nikki?" "You knew about the money when you sued me. You knew about it when you and Darren were recorded complaining about how you'd use me for 6 months and disappear. What specifically changed?" "Losing everything made me realize what matters. Family matters. You matter. You realized that after filing a lawsuit against me? I know how it looks. It looks like someone who tried every legal and emotional angle and is now attempting contrition because nothing else worked. Her face crumbled. That's not fair. Fair? I softened my tone. You sued me, Nikki. You tried to take money through the courts after trying to manipulate it out of me through performance. Now you're here saying you just want family. Can you understand why I have doubts? She cried harder. I have changed. Darren leaving, working at the bookshop, living in a tiny flat in Hamilton on $14 an hour. It humbled me. I stood, walked to my desk, retrieved a document from the drawer, and handed it to her. This is my current will. Notarized last month. Read section 4. She took the papers with trembling hands. Read. Her face shifted through several stages. Confusion. Disbelief. Shock. Then something darker. $1? Her voice cracked. Your own daughter gets $1 while millions go to strangers? Not strangers. I sat back down, hands folded. Organizations that serve people who gave everything and asked for nothing. Women escaping violence. Animals who need care. Young people from working families who deserve a chance at education. People who earn support through need, not entitlement. But I'm your daughter. Which is why you get $1 instead of nothing. New Zealand law requires specific mention to prevent claims of accidental omission under the Family Protection Act. That dollar proves I didn't forget you. I chose this deliberately. Her hands shook, rattling the papers. How can you do this? Let me be clear about something. I held her gaze. I love you, Nikki. That's not conditional. You're my daughter, and some part of me will always love you. But I don't trust you. Love doesn't require trust. Relationships do. You destroyed trust 14 years ago when you called me pathetic and walked away. You destroyed it again this year when you came back only because I had money. That's not true. 5 days, Nikki. 5 days between my wing going public and you showing up with suitcases. 14 years of silence and then 5 days. The timing tells the whole story. She stared at the will, then back at me. So that's it. You get the consequences of your choices. We all do. The tears stopped. Abruptly. Like a tap turning off. And in that moment, I knew I'd been right. Genuine grief doesn't have an off switch. Performance does. Rage flooded her face, replacing the calculated despair. You'll die alone, she said, standing. A bitter old man in a tiny house, leaving everything to strangers. No grandchildren. No family. No legacy except checks to organizations that'll forget your name in 5 years. I won't die alone. I spoke to her, retreating back. I'll die surrounded by people who cared about me before I had money and will care about me after it's gone. People who walk with me in the mornings. Friends who bring pikelets and lemon cake. Volunteers who know my name because I showed up, not because I wrote a check. You could have been one of those people, Nikki. You chose differently. Twice. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the photograph frames on my wall. I walked to the window. Watched her get into a battered Honda Civic, rust around the wheel arches. She sat motionless in the driver's seat for a long time. 5 minutes. 10. I could see her shoulders shaking, hands hitting the steering wheel. Then the engine started. She reversed fast, tires squealing on the pavement. The car disappeared around the corner toward the state highway. I stood at the window long after she'd gone. This was the ending. Not the one I'd imagined as a young father holding a newborn at Tauranga hospital, counting her fingers, planning her future. Not the one I'd dreamed about during her childhood, teaching her to swim at Pilot Bay, helping with school projects, saving for her education. But the ending her choices created, and mine. That evening, Beverly arrived with dinner. Beef and cheese pie from the bakery on Cameron Road, still warm. We sat in my garden, winter sun slanting low through the trees. How do you feel? She set down her fork, studying my face. Sad. But certain. I met her eyes. She didn't come to reconnect. She came to position herself for future access. I heard it in every word. The tears stopped the moment I made the inheritance clear. Like flipping a switch. That's not grief. That's strategy. Beverly nodded slowly. You gave her every chance. 14 years ago, I offered everything I had. This year, I offered charity work as a pathway back. Tonight, I would have accepted genuine accountability. She chose performance every time. My phone buzzed. Text from Murray at the walking group about Tuesday's route. Another from Fiona at the SPCA about the volunteer dinner next month. A third from the Coastal Trust about their summer program. You know what I've realized? I said. For 40 years, I moved containers from ships to trucks. Made sure valuable cargo reached the right destination without getting lost or stolen. I'm doing the same thing now. Moving resources to where they'll do the most good. Different cargo, same principle. Beverly smiled. Logistics of generosity. Something like that. A letter arrived 3 weeks later. Postmarked Hamilton. Handwritten on lined paper, 3 pages, each word carefully formed. Dad, I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. You were right about everything. I came to your house looking for an opening, not reconciliation. When you mentioned the 32 million, my mind immediately started calculating angles. Even while I was crying and saying I just wanted my father back, part of me was strategizing. You saw through it. You always did. Darren and I are finished. It should have ended years ago. We enabled each other's worst instincts. Apart, maybe we can both become better people. I'm working at the bookshop full-time now. It's quiet work. Gives me time to think. I'm paying down the debt slowly. At my current rate, it will take about 11 years. That seems right. I created this mess. I should dig myself out. You said you loved me but didn't trust me. I finally understand the difference. Love is what you gave me my whole childhood. Trust is what I destroyed, deliberately, repeatedly. I won't contact you again. You deserve peace. I hope the charities do wonderful things. I hope the scholarship helps kids who remind you of the person you were at their age. I'm sorry for everything. Those words don't fix anything, but they're true. Nikki. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it, placed it in my desk drawer. Acknowledgement preserved. Not answered. Some doors stay closed for good reason, even when the person on the other side finally understands why they were locked. But I didn't throw it away. It represented growth, however late. That deserved preservation, even if it didn't warrant a response. The dedication of the Marsden Community Center happened the following month. A bright spring morning, the new building gleaming with fresh paint on Willow Street. The structure housed both the Women's Refuge Outreach Services and job training programs. My donation funded the construction. Ongoing support from local businesses and the council would sustain operations. Over 100 people attended. Social workers I'd met through volunteer work. Community leaders. Local counselors. Beverly stood beside me as speakers described the programs. Job placement assistance. Counseling services. Skills training. Educational pathways. A young woman approached afterward. 28, maybe. She shook my hand firmly. Mr. Marsden, I want to thank you. This program helped me get out of a situation I thought I'd never escape. She gestured at the building. I start my nursing degree next semester on the Marsden Scholarship. I want to help other women the way this place helped me. You earned it, I said. I just moved money around. You did the hard part. Still. It matters. You matter. She walked away to join her mother and young son, building her future with tools I'd helped provide. An older man approached next. Vietnam-era veteran, in his late 70s, face weathered, but eyes sharp. Mr. Marsden, I read about what happened with your daughter. He shifted his weight. I wanted to say you did the right thing. Family isn't just blood. It's who shows up. Who cares when there's nothing in it for them? My own son hasn't spoken to me in 18 years. Your story helped me understand that sometimes love means distance. Sometimes protecting yourself is the bravest thing you can do. Thank you, I managed, throat tight. He gripped my shoulder briefly. You gave your resources to people who needed them. That's honorable. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Over the following weeks, I watched the ripple effects multiply. 35 women accessing new support services through the community center. 212 animals rehomed through the SPCA's expanded program. 14 young people from port workers' families receiving educational scholarships. The walking group gained 3 new members. The Wednesday evening pub quiz team at the Bethlehem Tavern adopted me as their permanent teammate. Mrs. Kahu's grandchildren started calling me Uncle Clive. My lottery winnings, that $2 ticket bought on a whim at the Devonport Road Dairy, were creating waves of change that would continue long after I was gone. A legacy built on purpose, not bloodline. One evening in late October, Beverly and I sat in my garden watching the pohutukawa start to bloom, the first red flowers appearing like promises. Any regrets? She sipped her wine. Not regrets. More like grief for what might have been. But not doubt. When Nikki visited, when she sat on my sofa crying, I saw calculation behind the tears. And when I told her about the will, the tears stopped. Instantly. That told me everything. You gave her every chance. Multiple chances, across 14 years. She made her choices. I made mine. That's not cruelty. It's survival. My phone buzzed. Text from Murray about the walking group. From Fiona about a new rescue dog. From the Coastal Trust about their Christmas event. You know what I've realized? I set down my glass. For 40 years, I tracked containers. Made sure they reached where they needed to go. That's still what I'm doing. Just with money instead of cargo. Moving it to where it'll matter most. You've said that before, Beverly smiled. I think you're finally believing it. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just learning to live with peace instead of always bracing for the next crisis. I gestured at the garden, the modest townhouse, the life I'd built. This is enough. More than enough. We sat in comfortable silence as the sky darkened. Somewhere in Hamilton, Nikki was working her bookshop shift, paying down debt, living with consequences. Somewhere in Australia, Darren was hiding behind a different name, repeating old patterns or trying to break them. Their paths had diverged from mine permanently. That separation used to feel like failure. The father who couldn't keep his only child. Now it felt like wisdom. Some relationships are toxic no matter how much you love the person. Some boundaries are necessary for survival. Drawing them isn't heartless. It's the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and sometimes even for them, because consequences are the only teachers some people will listen to. I felt no triumph in their struggles. No satisfaction in the divorce or the debt. Just quiet acceptance that this was the cost of protection. The evening cooled. Beverly stood to gather the plates. Same time next week? We're planning the Christmas food drive for the community center. I'll be there. After she left, I stayed in the garden. The townhouse lights glowed behind me, warm and welcoming. My home. The 2A were settling into the flax for the night, their calls softening. Somewhere down the street, children were laughing. I'd spent 65 years building a life. Lost some of it to choices others made. Rebuilt it into something different, something smaller but more honest. Not the retirement I'd imagined as a young father. Not the grandchildren or family dinners or legacy passed through blood. But a life nonetheless. The lottery hadn't brought me happiness. $32 million can't do that. Money amplifies who you already are. Reveals character rather than creating it. What the money had given me was resources to build purpose. To help others. To establish boundaries. To choose family based on mutual respect rather than genetic obligation. That was enough. More than enough. Peace found me here, in this modest townhouse with its small garden and kind neighbors, doing quiet work that mattered for people who appreciated it. Not dramatic peace. Not the triumphant vindication you might expect from a story like mine. Just sustainable, daily peace. Waking up without dread. Going to bed without regret. Spending my days doing things that made a small corner of the world slightly better. The letter from Nikki sat in my desk drawer. I wouldn't answer it. But I wouldn't throw it away. Some doors stay closed. But you don't have to burn them. And if this story teaches anything, let it be this. Love your children with everything you have. But never let anyone, not even your own blood, convince you that love means allowing yourself to be used. Boundaries are not the opposite of love. They are its backbone. And sometimes the bravest thing a parent can do is say no, walk away, and build a life that proves your worth was never measured by what you could give away, but by who you chose to become when the giving stopped. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To listen to the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for watching.